pardon, excuse pardon. Yeah. I'd like more drums there.
No, I think it's on that.
It sounds like a
on the other
cover,
bit, where he goes
right,
on the third bit. You know, on the
third bit,
okay.
the more bang.
I could listen to him for hours.
Guys, welcome to a classic film review of 1964's A Hard Day's Night, starring, of course, the Beatles and directed by Richard Lester. It's 2 days in the life of the planet's most famous band as they prepare for a live television performance. Now, this is less a film, more of a mechanism to capitalise on the onset of Beatlemania, and has a loose comedic narrative that's used just to hang a handful of the greatest pop records of all time on. Now, if you are not a Beatles fan, then you may think this is absolutely irrelevant to you, but this is also something more than a shameless bit of PR for the band. I mean, it is that, no doubt, but this is also a brilliant snapshot of an England that was post-war but still on the precipice of the swinging 60s, and of course, one of the pillars on which the modern music video was built upon. Let's take a look. So, A Hard Day's Night stars a few people you may have heard of. Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, George Harrison and John Lennon. Collectively, the Beatles, and already a few albums into their career, and had just begun to sell millions of records in the United States, no small thanks to their Ed Sullivan Show appearance, and in a move designed to shift some soundtrack units in the US, something Elvis had been doing since 1956, the band was signed to a 3-movie deal.
Now, you'll like these. You'll really dig them. They're fab and all the other pimply hyperboles.
Now, I will briefly mention the plot, but honestly, it's hardly worth it. The Beatles are en route to a televised gig, and a series of events transpire that threaten to make them late. The plot, of course, halting every now and then for a musical number. Now, getting in the group's way are, of course, hordes of screaming fans, but also the fact that Paul's very clean grandfather is inexplicably turned up.
Hey, pardon me for asking, but who's that little old man?
What little old man?
That little old man.
Oh, that one, that's my grandfather.
Your grandfather? He's a nice old man, isn't he?
He's very clean.
Ringo's been arrested after nearly injuring a parrot with a dart and causing a woman to fall into a hole at a construction site. And if that sentence sounds strange, then you haven't seen anything yet.
Gotcha, you nasty little person, you.
You see, the Beatles by nature were a group of cheeky young chaps. Any interviews with the band from around this period highlights their dry and very English sense of humour, and this is naturally carried over to performances where they play themselves.
Shazam! It's my considered opinion that you're a bunch of sissies.
You're just jealous.
Leave him alone, Lennon, or I'll tell him all the truth about you.
You wouldn't.
Oh, I would, though.
But what many modern audience members may struggle with here is that British entertainment of the late 50s and early 60s was that of music halls, variety shows and comedy in the vein of the Carry On films, and so A Hard Day's Night is really a fusion of all those things. Now, on a personal note, I'm a big Beatles fan, but I've never really been a fan of their films, this included, for a long time. The throw as many skits together and hope the music acts as the glue way that this is assembled baffled me initially, and I'm sure that when it was released it must have seemed like a breath of fresh air. I remember just a year before this, Cliff Richard was travelling around Europe on a bus in Summer Holiday, a film that didn't go down well in the US and that had Cliff playing a character, and sensibly here the powers that be knew that the public just wanted John, Paul, George and Ringo.
Have you seen Paul's grandfather?
Of course he's concealed about my person.
Now, he must have slipped off somewhere.
Have you lost him?
Now, don't exaggerate.
You've lost him!
Look, put it this way, Paulie. He's mislaid him.
Honest, you can't trust you with anything, Nob.
And by utilising this day-in-the-life structure, the Beatles present us with caricatured versions of encounters that they would have had in their day-to-day, being endlessly interviewed by the media, being recognised and chased by adoring fans, attending celebrity parties, etc. Now, a moment when the group escape being trapped in their hotel room by stuffy authority figures via the fire escape highlights a youthful rebellion and a freedom that would ripple through most of society in the coming years.
Stay in here until that rehearsal, and I'm going to keep you in even after put the lock in the key and turn it. We're out!
Can't buy me love, love.
So outside of featuring songs that I'm a huge fan of, why does this hold my interest more than, say, Summer Holiday or even Blue Hawaii? Well, for a start, its director Richard Lester sensibly keeps things moving at a brisk pace. Typical storytelling beats are basically thrown out the window here and replaced with mixing sight gags, one-liners and songs. Lester uses gimmicky camera shots that are clearly inspired by the French New Wave, such as jump cuts and fast and slow motion shots. Godard and Truffaut's movies like Breathless and Jules and Jim were beginning to change cinema. Now, what's really interesting is that by riffing on this filmmaking style and soundtracking it to pop records, the music video was inadvertently birthed. Now, this wasn't Cliff or Elvis just sat around crooning to some young adoring teenagers. This was helicopter shots mixed with handheld, sped up footage with the Beatles just clowning around to their own music. MTV, you're welcome. Now, A Hard Day's Night is credited with inspiring the Monkees television series and ultimately shows like Broaden Your Mind and The Goodies and possibly even Monty Python. Now, A Hard Day's Night was made in about 6 weeks for only $500,000 and has gone on to make north of 10 million. It was released in the July of 1964, just before the album of the same name, which entered the charts at #1 and stayed there for 21 weeks, I think being replaced with the Beatles' next album in the December of that year. Now, A Hard Day's Night is a historical cinematic curiosity. It captures the ignition of a pop culture explosion in real time. The Fab Four were still family friendly at this stage, and their first film is a comedy of surreal satire featuring the kinds of tongue-in-cheek silliness and innuendo that everyone could chuckle along to.
Hey, look at the talent. Let's give him a pull.
Should I?
Aye, but don't rush none of your 5-bar gate jumps and over sort of stuff.
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't know. I thought it just sounded distinguished, like.
George Harrison, the Scars of Distinction.
The film was nominated for 2 Oscars, screenplay and music, and is rightly held as one of the great British films of the 60s. Its 4 mop-top stars were only a couple of years away from reaching the peak of their creativity in the studio. They'd stumble in the film world, though, with Help and Magical Mystery Tour failing to recapture that giddy euphoria of 4 lads from Liverpool seemingly stumbling upon unimaginable fame and its many pitfalls, but having a bloody good time nonetheless. Go check it out.
Excuse me, have you seen that little old man we were with?
Talking out the blessed freedom of it all. Have you got a nail file? These handcuffs are killing me. I was playing them innocents. I don't want to go.
Sorry for disturbing you, girls.
I bet you can't guess what I was in for.